Everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining the Goldcast Insider webinar. My name is Kelly Chang, and I'm the head of marketing here at Goldcast. I'm going to be your host today, and I'm super excited to kick off this fantastic series that we've got planned for all of you. Before we dive in, let me just share my slides. Before we dive into today's session, today is actually the first of a three-part series. So make sure you mark your calendars for next Tuesday and the Tuesday after for the upcoming sessions. This will be recorded, and so we will make sure that everybody here gets a copy of the recording as soon as it's ready later today. And we will also be having a Q&A session at the end. So please feel free to submit all of your questions in the chat in the Q&A tab that's to your right-hand side. And we will make sure that we cover your questions, as many of those questions as we can towards the end. We are also running an exciting giveaway today, or in the next couple of weeks as well. Let me share my screen. All right. And so we are giving away an AirTag passport wallet. To win this today, all you have to do is attend today, and you can also come up on stage for a Q&A. So look below the stage to the bottom right-hand corner of your stage. There is a button that says raise hand. You can actually show the instructions here. If you click on that raise hand button, you would be able to, that'll send me a notification that you've raised your hand, and I will be able to pick you from your seat at home and bring you up on stage so we can have a little chat. So if you want to win that airport wallet AirTag, go ahead and do that today. We're also giving away a beach chair and also an Airbnb gift card for all of those that are planning summer vacations and holidays. What we're going to cover today is actually, we're going to understand LinkedIn's algorithm. We're going to learn about how to leverage LinkedIn's features to really maximize your post visibility. We're going to learn about crafting engaging LinkedIn content. So we all know that the feed has some algorithms and hooks and all that. So we'll explore how to write the best hooks to create compelling narratives that's tailored specifically for LinkedIn. And then we'll also discuss how to enhance your posts with visual and videos to really capture attention. And then next week, we're going to be talking about crafting high-impact LinkedIn content, really getting your LinkedIn content strategy down. And then the final session will be about layering video into your content strategy, how to really effectively do this. In case you missed it, LinkedIn now has a vertical video feed on the mobile device. So how do you take advantage of this new trend? All right, so it is now my pleasure to introduce our guest, Mark Jung, who is the founder of Authority, a B2B LinkedIn growth agency that helps turn attention to authority on LinkedIn. Mark has over 56,000 followers on LinkedIn and is recognized as a top digital marketing voice. He's also the host of Marketing Notes podcast and has spoken at different events like South by Southwest. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mark to the stage.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kelly. Everyone, so excited to dive in. This is going to be, unlike Kelly, who prepared great slides, I'm just going to screen share LinkedIn and go into Chrome, and we're going to do some stuff live because that's more just my style. This is going to be a really interactive event. So if you have questions, if you have comments, drop them in the chat, and we're going to use this to make sure that we can drive as much value for y'all as possible. One thing that we will be doing at the end of the episode is we're going to be picking someone from the chat. We're going to throw your LinkedIn profile live up on my screen, and I'm going to essentially give you a full rundown of like profile optimization, headline, strategy, about, and your content live in this session. So make sure to stick around to the end. We're going to try to make this as value-packed as possible. Usually there's like a ton of long intros. I'll try to keep mine like 30 seconds, very tight. So used to be in B2B SaaS marketing for about 4 years. Went from new to tech to VP of a $3 billion company, and really did this building my brand on LinkedIn. That was really like the core area I've focused on in the last 3.5 years. Now run a B2B LinkedIn agency. It's called Authority B2B with my co-founder, Daniel Murray. Y'all may know him. He's the founder of the Marketing Millennials. Make sure to give Daniel and TMM a follow. Just hit 1 million followers on LinkedIn. And a big part of how we've done what we've done in building media brands and personal brands is LinkedIn. So going to dive right in. We're going to talk about 4 myths versus facts with a little fun screen share, and feel free to drop your thoughts in the chat and we'll get going. So first myth that I hear a ton on LinkedIn is you should talk more about your product and that's how you grow. And I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions in SaaS today. So we're going to have some fun here. I'm going to throw up my content and we're going to jump right in. Let me know if y'all have any questions. Here we go. This is Mythbusters Live. I don't have a goatee, but we'll do my best. Let me know if you can't see it. So myth number one here, you should be marketing the problem you solve, not the product you have. So this is a post I wrote about this, you can see here. And I want to talk a little bit about what the difference is and how you can do this well on LinkedIn. So number one, this is what most companies do. And we'll talk about like how I write content, how I write hooks, but when I dive right in, most companies write content that looks like this. It's we content, right? We just shipped this new feature. We just won this award. We rank #1 in X. The problem is like your stories lose power with we, they gain power with you. And here's the big difference. When you're writing we, you're writing about your company, your product, but here's the problem. 97% of your B2B audience don't actually want you buy yet. They don't know you, right? When you're writing for you, you're writing directly to your audience. So this is one of the biggest shifts that you can make. So think about this. And again, you can take a look at the post. We'll drop this all in the notes later and you'll have it in the recording. When you're announcing a new product, a new feature, or something, think about your audience and what actually matters to them, right? Hey, we have some AI-powered content collaboration that helps you transcribe podcasts, let's say. It's like, no, you're probably spending an hour at night when you should be eating dinner. So instead, it's like we're getting you off your phone and back to the dinner table. So pick one emotion, try to connect it to a story and like a real problem that you're actually solving. And again, there's a ton of stuff here. I won't go through a lot of this live, but when you write one emotion to one audience with one topic and make it something that's valuable in the feed. If you don't follow Amanda over at SparkToro, she has a great saying, which is called, you should create 0-click content. What that means is like in this feed, you should be making sure that you have content that's adding value in the feed in and of itself. No one has to click anywhere away from this to get value. You can see I'm not plugging anything. I'm just saying, follow me. And you can see it's like this reached almost 700,000 people, right? So at the end of the day, it's like write for your audience, not about your company. Writing more about your product, your webinars, etc. is not what's going to actually grow your business and get people engaged and following you. There's a really simple structure I use, and we'll talk more about this later, which is like you have your company brand, which is designed to convert the 3 to 5% of B2B buyers in the market, right? You then have your personal brands, which could be your founders, your team members, anyone in the company who bring like their personality and their spin to LinkedIn through your content. Then you have your media brands. And these media brands and personal brands are attracting the 97% of people who aren't ready to buy yet, who don't know you. People buy from people they know, like, and trust. First, you have to get them to know you. Then you have to get them to trust you. That's when you can actually drive conversion. So use that simple structure. We'll talk more about it later. But I want to talk about myth number 2 for a second, which is an interesting one for me, which is probably something that I hear a lot about today that I think would be less common, which is personal brands and social is better for your ego than it is for your business. I also hear a lot of, social is an entry-level role. Social won't get you a seat at the executive table. There isn't a path from social to marketing leadership. And in my experience, all of these are false. So I'll give you some stats and we'll talk a little bit about sort of why we do what we do and how we do what we do. But in the first 62 days that Daniel and I launched Authority, we added a run rate of $1 million ARR in our first 62 days of business. And we only promoted 3 to 4 times when we launched in February. And a big part of that was just what you see here. I have Authority in my cover photo. I have an overview in my LinkedIn profile. And I have an about section that tells a little bit of our story. P.S. Fun fact here, only about 1/5 of your audience will actually click to see more of your about section in LinkedIn. So your very first 2 lines, the ones that are visible, like your hook and your rehook here, need to be super clear of what you do. In this case, mine just says, hey, I'm Mark Young, founder at Authority. We help leaders, founders, and companies turn attention into authority on LinkedIn. So make sure when you're writing your about, you want to have it be super tight and aligned so that if the 80% don't actually expand your about, they know what you're actually about and what you do. But anyways, you can see the longer TLDR, I'll skip it, but that's literally all we have is some light branding. And if you click this, it takes you to our website, which is still a Notion page. A lot of people think that you need a fancy logo and a fancy website to drive business from LinkedIn. This is literally a Notion page that we've hosted since February when we launched the business. And that's all that it says. It is literally a one-page Notion page. So don't overcomplicate it, but literally the jump that I made from new to tech to where I am today all started with LinkedIn. So I want to get a little more tactical for y'all now. And if you have questions, myths, anything like that, throw them in the chat. But this is probably the one that I think is one of the most damaging. I'm going to give you a funny example for it. I hear this a lot. LinkedIn text posts are the purest form of posting on LinkedIn, and you should use text posts and not image posts. And the data that we've seen at Authority, I looked at our H1 metrics. All of our clients are averaging somewhere between 1 million to 4 million impressions per month right now. We've done 101.3 million impressions in our H1 across our client base, and 97% of those are rich media content. Here's the 3 reasons why, and then I'll tell the story. So I've got a post, and I'll drop this in the chat for y'all later at the end. But here are the 3 reasons of why you should be using image posts, and we're going to talk a lot about this going into content. Number 1, what happens on your phone when you see a text post? You're competing with 3 other posts in the feed simultaneously. When you have an image post, I use 800 by 999. You can use 800 by 1000, but I usually give LinkedIn like a rounding error. You're competing as one of one. It's like if I put 3 dishes in front of you that you want to eat, maybe one of them just happens to be more you're in the mood for today, versus if I just put a piece of pizza in front of you and you like pizza, you're probably going to eat it. So visually, you're giving the opportunity to make sure that you have really great engagement and are stopping the scroll immediately in the feed. When you're using text, you literally only have 1/3 of the space to actually win. So number 1, it's helping you stop the scroll and get attention. Number 2, which is going to take me back to the power of search, is this is the other Mark Young. Mark Young is incredibly famous. He was the founder of IGN. He is, like one of the, I think, like most well-known investors, business exec. I own the number 1 search on Google in the SERP because of LinkedIn, and here's why. When you look up Mark Young LinkedIn, look at all the images that are getting indexed on the content I've created over the years. Now, imagine you were John Smith, Sarah Smith, someone who's competing with a lot in the feed. I technically use the name Mark P. Young, and you can see here, the reason being, when someone messages me on LinkedIn, I can see if it's an automated message because my middle initial is included in the first name. So that's why I do that. But imagine your name was just John Smith. The entire image feed in Google search is now owned by me, right? So there's a massive SEO value to when you actually create image posts versus text posts that don't get indexed the right way. Like you can literally see when your first scroll, you cannot find anyone but me. So think about that. And this was a funny example with one of our clients. We're on a call and they're like, what was that stat we used for that post? And I was like, I don't know, like, let me look at it. I'm screen sharing. In 2 weeks, they took over an Inc. article with 987 backlinks from 2017 as the featured snippet on Google with 1 image post. Literally, Google's featured snippet is now owned because they had a good image post and it got engagement, right? So literally, you're giving up on free organic traffic if you're not using images and media in your posts. The third, this is what builds your brand. Right. If I scroll down to the images that I use, we use billboards, we use, static graphics, but a lot of time you see this, you see my name, you see the company, you see my face, you see the branding, white stuff. And this means that if anyone ever reposts your content, your brand is still visible and highly active. So that way you're helping build familiarity in the feed. So it's like, if you don't feel comfortable taking selfies, if you don't want to use that style of content, you don't have to. I don't do that. I use it in a very light Canva template. The 3 of the reasons I love it are these, which is you need high contrast to win in the feed. Using an image post gives you a ton of contrast and room to actually drive engagement. The second thing, and while we'll talk about it in my content, is when you use an image that has text in it, you give yourself 2 times the surface area to test new hooks. What's going to work? Think of it like a great ice cream sundae. A great ice cream sundae is not just like a vanilla and vanilla and vanilla. It's like vanilla, some type of sauce, and some type of texture. That's how you should be thinking about your image, what's in your image hook, and your text hook and rehook, which we'll talk about later. So last thing that I want to talk about is hyper specific to the algorithm today. and it's about how to drive actual strong engagement in the feed. A lot of people think that the best way to drive traffic from LinkedIn, if you're not creating zero-click content, is to put the link in the comments. This is wrong. LinkedIn is pretty smart. You know, they've made some like interesting UI decisions since the Microsoft acquisition. We won't go into that. But back in the day, people used to sort of get around LinkedIn stuff by just dropping a link in the comments and saying, hey, check out the comments. The problem is LinkedIn actually parses if you're the first person to comment on your post, if you're the first person to add a link, even if you actually write like the website but remove the .com and say .com, LinkedIn's algorithm is onto you. It's immediately going to take your post and downrank it. So what should you do instead? You can still add the link in the comments, but my recommendation is wait 20 to 30 minutes and make sure there's at least a handful of people that have commented on your post. Then include a follow-up post in the comments that adds additional value that goes above and beyond what you're saying, add some value, then include the link. You can do that. My favorite way to do that, and what I did for this morning, is I took my post. This is from a few hours ago. It's still trending up right now. I'll probably do 100, maybe 150,000 impressions at its current state. You can edit your post and add the link either at the end with a call to action, or you can actually add it as your second line, your rehook, so it's immediately visible in the feed, the same way your like visit my website would be. The reason that this works is you have to be very specific about the character count you edit. So you want to keep it under 15% of the total character count. Okay. So if you edit your post that has 1,000 characters, I usually use 14% as like the determining factor. Make sure that whatever text you added, so in this case, you know, my text here plus my link was under 14% of the total character count. And that's why I usually like using a short link like Bitly. LinkedIn will truncate your link if you share a long link. The problem is that long link is going to count towards your character count before it gets truncated, and LinkedIn could downrank your post. So wait 20 to 30 minutes, get engagement on your post, get organic comments, then edit your post under 14% of the total character count and add a link. So those are some quick takes here. Gonna take a pause. We'll talk a little bit about my metrics and some content, and then we'll jump right in and talk about audience profile. So make sure if you want your profile reviewed, drop your profiles in the chat, and the team are gonna pick someone. We'll basically screen share your profile. We'll go through it and we'll talk through your content and how to optimize it. But here's why I like doing screen shares, because a lot of people like will talk about what they do on LinkedIn. My goal is to show you, you know, I'm not trying to gatekeep things here. I want to more just be like, here's what I do. I average between like 1 and 1.2 million impressions per week. So you can see here, this is sort of my growth rate. I'll grow typically like 2.5% per week. So that averages about 13,000 new followers a quarter using this technique of how we'll talk about our content and what we do. So you can see here, had a big spike in my 14 days. Why is that? Well, it's because I'm a real person and I took 3 weeks of vacation. So you can see here, literally took vacation over 3 weeks. So you can see what I'm talking about works, and it works for me. It may not be the right strategy for you, but learn the principles of what's going to work behind it, which is kind of my goal here. And you can see, again, averaging about 12 to 13,000 new followers per quarter in terms of like how we do what we do. So I'm going to talk content now and shift gears while we get some links in the profile here. But I want to talk about the 4 types of content that I create today. And we talked a little bit about this of like why to create image posts in the first place. Almost all of my content, I would say 60% of my content looks like this. It is an 800 by 999 image. And it has my name, my title, light branding, fonts, high contrast, and I use what I call an image hook in that post. And the reason I use an image hook is what I talked about earlier in the Sunday analogy. You want to give yourself the maximum coverage of having multiple points of view to test at the same time. So if you look at my image hook here, it says your brand is not your logo, your brand is your reputation. Typically, your best image hooks are the simplest form of your idea. Think about it this way. Your image hook needs to be something that your audience can have a point of view or interact with by itself, right? So if my image hook said, here's 7 ways you can grow your LinkedIn content, that's not a strong image hook because no one can react to that unless they actually read the post. And what I always say is you can have the Michelangelo in like the body of your post, But if no one stops and clicks see more to actually read it, it does not exist, right? So the way that we like to pair hooks is we write a text hook as your first line and a rehook as your second line, which tends to be slightly different, really focused, and is more like a movie trailer for your post. We shouldn't give everything away. It should have enough curiosity, it should have enough interest, and it should have power words that make people stop and pay attention. One of the things that I think a lot of B2B companies get wrong about this in writing hooks is they use really advanced language or more complicated words. So it's like, never use the word utilize when you should use the word use, right? Never use the words we when you should be talking about you or your audience. One of my favorite things to do in your rehook is ask a question. So it's like, here's your statement, here's your second statement, why, or how this works. Because why or how this works is a natural curiosity hook. You have to click see more for me to tell you the answer of why or how it works. So again, in this case, you can see here, this is probably 800 words. I talk a lot about, my belief, which is that content is not for lead gen. Content is for trust gen. And I really like to use a simple way of how I write. You notice that a lot of my writing is like short, formatted, and very scannable. The reason being, you need to write from mobile on LinkedIn. But 70% of people will consume your content on mobile. When you have long, massive paragraphs and maybe someone's like reading LinkedIn for 3 minutes between a meeting, they're going to see that. And psychologically, it's going to fatigue them. But if you write this way, and if you notice a lot of my content has this like format where it goes long to short, psychologically, there's a trick. And this works and is kind of proven. There's a ton of studies behind it. Long sentences that get shorter and shorter over time, psychologically influence you that it's going to get easier, like riding a bike downhill, which gets your attention. The same way we read in an F pattern, it's how we consume content. So it gives you a sense of actually feeling easier as you read. So that's format one. I'd say use, at least for me, 50 to 60% of my content is this format. And that's what you were seeing in Google search about like owning the SERP. So number two that I use are billboards. And this was one that I wrote this week. So I took that same hook, right, that I used before that was a high performing hook in an image post, and I put it on a billboard. Why does that work? Do you notice that this doesn't have my face, but it does have my font, some light branding, it's high contrast. Here's exactly what we did here with this format and why it worked. Again, you can see here, content marketing is not just for leads, it's how you earn trust at scale. Very simple post. This was just top of funnel, didn't include a ton of depth behind it, but you can see, look how simple that image is. You can have an opinion on just that image, right? You can have an opinion on just that opening text hook or rehook, and look at the contrast when that's in your feed. Imagine that hits you on your phone. Look at the blue and how easy it is for you to see the text and have an opinion on the text above that or the image itself. I'm taking up your entire feed to make sure that we have really clear attention, that you're stopping and engaging. And I think one of the things that you should always ask yourself, and it's a really fun retro, if you see a post on LinkedIn that gets your attention, stop yourself in that moment and say, why did I pay attention to this? What was it that caught my attention? And really run a retro and ask yourself why. You'll start to find the principles of what engages with you. Often the time people want to share things that look interesting, cool, right? That their network will value, that they're not going to be seen as like being judged if they share something. So a lot of the posts that might feel like low production value, maybe a little bit cringy, those are the ones that aren't going to get as much engagement. If you take something like this and you put it on a high res billboard, there's shadows, it has cool contrast, it's a interesting saying, but there's some depth to it. That's what gets people engaged in helping you build your media brand. So the third thing, and this may not be for everyone, but this is for me, I naturally tell stories through humor. That's like my default of what I do. So about 25% of my posts are humor. And the way that I do this is I try to think about like the social and emotional side of what my audience actually cares about. And I try to bring that to life in ways where you can like poke fun at real problems where people can essentially start to like bond over that pain. So everyone's probably had this feeling where it's like, do more with less, get creative, like you wanted the marketing team for that new hire and instead you just got like a Canva license and some more coffee and a pizza party, right? So it's like, I use pop culture and connect what's happening in pop culture. This is from The Boys, which has started season 2. And I'll try to create content that will like make my audience do one of 5 things. So the 5 things that I'm a big fan of, and this is a really simple way to think about your content, should do at least 1 emotion, 1 key point, and 1 audience. Rule of 1. Okay. Then what you want to do is do one of these 5 things. Your content should teach me something. Your content should inspire me. Your content should entertain me. Your content should challenge me, right? My new opinions, give me something new, or make me laugh. SaaS is stressful. Marketing is stressful. Business is stressful. People want an outlet for LinkedIn. Lots of that we'll talk about sort of in my career of how I've used this before to build net new media arms. We'll talk about that in episode 2 and my exact framework for how to do it. But my last one before we pull up someone's content from the audience is, again, this is more humor. I use video. I'm going to be doing more video of like me talking heads and depth. But a lot of the time, you know, this is a pain that people have experienced. Finance cutting your budget in half. I thought this was hilarious. I thought it was funny. And it's like good top of funnel content that my audience enjoys. So I'm going to jump in. I'll stop the screen share and drop your questions in the comments, and we'll start to pick someone, and then I will throw their profile up and we can do a live review here real quick. But I'd say the most important thing to get right for content in general is don't create something that you wouldn't yourself consume. The same way that I never send an email that I wouldn't say myself. If my email or my LinkedIn post isn't something that would actually come out of my mouth, like my words, I wouldn't post it. I wouldn't say it. So one of the things that you can do that I love to do is I use dictation. So you can do this in Google Docs for free and just turn your mic on. You can use it with any Chrome extension. I will go take my phone and I will just record myself and transcribe it and like walk and talk. And I literally pull my ideas and how I say things, sound effects, all that stuff to really try to create something that feels authentically me. So it's like I use third party, I use sounds, I use exaggeration, hyperbole, all those ways to try to bring like my unique personality to life, because people will come for your content, but they return for your personality. And a big part of B2B thinks they need to be super professional and buttoned up to win. It's like, no, people want to connect to people that they relate to, that understand them. And if everything you say is like, dear sir, dear ma'am, corporate, sincerely, you're probably not really connecting with your audience. So I've got a profile up here. Logan, we'll see. Kelly, if you want to come on stage, I'll share my screen and we can go through this together. This is going to be fun.
Mark, super excited to roast Logan.
No roasting here. This is going to be fun, I promise. So I'm going to toggle this on, which lets me actually like real time edit what we're seeing.
Also, Logan, if you want to join us on stage, feel free to raise your hand. I can put you up on stage with us.
Yeah, that's definitely more fun. So log into your game, come on down, and we can do this. So first things first, with the new, Logan, Wolverine, Deadpool coming out, I think probably that should be your profile like immediately. I think we should have that entirely in your banner with like the branding and maybe like a light cameo of Ryan Reynolds. Just saying, I think it's like a great opportunity. Okay, so let's take a look here using the company banner around Yext, which is like standard, good to go. The one thing that I would do, kind of just thinking of the profile, is have the one thing that you want to be known about or your company to know about in writing, so that if anyone lands here, there's like at least your one-liner. So in my profile, if you see it, it says like authority B2B, right? Turn attention into authority, right? So very, very just a minor point, but make sure you actually have a written value prop or something there. I find especially in SaaS, you want to have some type of trust metrics. So named after Wolverine, that's actually amazing. Kudos to the parents because that's sick. So any type of like social trust logos. One of the opportunities or challenges that we have is we're a stealth agency at Authority. So it's like you won't see us sharing the logos of anyone we work with. You won't see those like in my banner. But most companies, social is a shortcut, right? When someone hits your profile, you want to look at why should I pay attention to you? Why should I trust you? And a big part of that is having that quick, like, okay, that makes sense. So beyond kind of the banner and the graphic, I like the smile and the headshot. I think it feels personal. It feels authentic. The one thing that I find to be, and this is just me, I like to do a centered photo that removes like distraction from the background. The reason being, my eyes immediately, just based on the contrast of your profile, go to the red tower in your profile picture, not to like the headline of your profile. So it's a small thing, but oftentimes what I'll do is you can go into Canva and just use like magic erase. The rule of one. Yeah, I can come back to that. So rule of one, and the recording will be there too. One emotion, one key point for one audience. That is the rule of one. Too many people try to do too many things at one time, which means they're not memorable enough. You only have one message per post at one time. Don't try to do everything. It's kind of like the CEO that says, can we do A and B and C and D and E and F and G? There's a really great analogy. It's the same for an interaction that Steve Jobs had with his advertising agency. And if you ever have an in-person offsite, feel free to use this. And Logan, I promise it's relevant for you too. Steve Jobs wanted to include 5 features in one of Apple's newest ads. And their advertising director says like, no, we can't do that. So what he did is he went and took a piece of paper, he crumpled it up and he threw it at Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs caught it. He said, that's a great ad. Then what he did is he went and took 5 pieces of paper, crumpled them up, threw them at Steve Jobs. Guess what? Steve Jobs caught none of them. That's what happens when you don't follow the rule of one. People can parse one thing at one time in one place, designed for one audience, one emotion. Okay. So think about that story. It's very powerful. And if you ever have that internally, I promise you it will stop like can we do more? Literally like do that in your meetings, throw papers at your executive. I promise it's great. So Logan, coming back to you and the profile and what we're going to do here. I'm going to go through your headline and we'll go through kind of a little bit about your content and we'll talk about this. Scaling marketing programs, emoji. Okay. Second section, increasing companies' pipeline through digital events, demand gen specialist. Okay, so I'd say like in terms of the formatting, there's a lot of different frameworks you can use for headlines. Overall, I would say you're hitting the right things. Scaling marketing programs talks about like the overall side of what you do. Increasing companies' pipeline through digital events is hyper specific and short. The one thing that I would say here is, okay, what kind of companies? Are you targeting D2C? Are you targeting B2B? And like, is there a secret behind you that really gives you something unique and edgy? I think one of the most common things we hear in B2B is increase revenue, increase pipeline, take things to super growth. The problem is people don't pay for gains. They pay for problems to be solved. So if I think about this, we're creating pipeline through digital events. If I'm putting myself in the head of like an ideal buyer who has events, do you know what one of the most embarrassing things about events is? Getting butts in seats so that people actually show up and attend. There's no worse feeling, right, than having people not come to your event. So key part of what you should be doing is think about like the emotional state your audience are in, right? So it's like, okay, scaling marketing programs, increasing company pipeline through digital events, and you're a demand gen specialist, right? So if you were going to get hyper specific here, I think you can combine some of these, right? And saying, imagine this was like more of an emotional sentence around that audience. Is Logan able to come up and we can like walk and talk with him and like workshop this live? Or are you in the chat still? Because I'd love to like riff with you and get something that we can actually like get through. Otherwise, I'm gonna just like make assumptions about what you do.
Logan's in the chat here, yeah.
Okay, so Logan, give me like the 30-second version of like what makes you unique. And what's like the main emotional problem you're solving for your ideal customer profile? Because really the way that I'd be thinking about this would be like, I liked what you had in terms of like, hey, we're increasing pipeline through digital events and like you specialize in demand gen. But to me, it's missing the emotional problem that you're solving for your audience. It's missing the hyper specific of like, this is a Chrome extension. I think it's called Edit Anything. You can grab it. And it basically is like, on Mac, Command-Shift-C lets you like Chrome edit. It lets you do Chrome edit in real time. So like I can update Logan's name right now to Kelly, right? It's not like a perfect example, but it lets you just like do real quick edits like this right now. So
Mark,
we'll come back to the title. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like I see a lot of people on LinkedIn with their names, actually, because I see Logan has emojis in his description. And I see that sometimes people have emojis in their names. Like, what do you think of that?
So the reason people do that the same way that I have P in my first name, it's so that you can basically see what's automated on LinkedIn. When I have like, so mine says, right, like Mark P and I have it in my first name, Young. The reason I have that is because technically I do have a middle name, but when I get an automated message on LinkedIn, it says, hi, Mark P. Whereas when I get a real message that someone created for me, they say, hi, Mark, because no one's going to send hi, Mark P. That's just weird. So the emoji before the name or the middle name can tend to signify. Another thing that I love about emojis is like you can start to own it. Like personally, I use the peace emoji a lot because ironically enough, I don't know why, as a kid, I was fascinated with Richard Nixon. Don't get me why, not talking politics, nothing to do with that. But as a kid, like I literally have, as you can see here, a framed peace sign. This is no joke. This is in my kitchen right now. Didn't plan this. And the reason about that is like almost all my posts end with victory, because like that's the emoji that I want to try to own. So it's a fun way that you can actually start to become known for something like that. Another great thing is it adds contrast. So what makes me unique besides Wolverine is I have a background in all different parts of marketing of products, which I now hope. Okay, great. So then I think like the way that I would do that too is just like, right, full stack marketer, right, who gets butts in seat, right, driving demand. And like we'll workshop copy later, but the reason that you want like your differentiator is you want to think about like, right, what makes you unique for your ICP, right, plus like emotional benefit of how you solve that problem. So theoretically, let's say that you had something like hyper specific that your audience had this pain of like, I'll pick one that I know about was event marketers and field marketers who struggle to get people to their events. It's like embarrassing. So there's no worse feeling than spending a ton of time and effort on an event that doesn't get people to show up, but that doesn't drive pipeline. So it's like, we help you create events your audience actually care about, right? So that you don't look bad at your next board meeting, right? That to me is like a rough version of that emotional state of what you're trying to say. And the like full stack marketer driving demand, I think that's something more that I would actually bring in your about section. So we'll review your about and then we'll go through your content here. So right now, Logan's about says, I started my career working for a marketing agency where I learned the ins and outs of different marketing tactics and strategies. As a content marketer, I not only spend time strategizing, but also creating. Okay, so first line, one of the things that I would do differently out of the gates here is this talks about like your history and what you do, but it doesn't show me that you know what you're doing. And you definitely do, because I mean, there's a lot of things you're doing right, but think about this as like show, don't tell, right? So it's like, if you spent your career at a marketing agency, I would say something like what you know about product marketing, what you know about content creation, what you know about social. Find a way to demonstrate that. Usually, I think a great way to do this is some type of like data, some type of result, some type of like interesting thing that's going to make me pay attention. When I look at sort of your profile right now, you know, with the pandemic changing the landscape, I transitioned my focus to, there's not like a powerful hook immediately in your about where it's like, I get Logan, I see him. But had your about said like, you know, I spent 5 years in a marketing agency managing 70 million in spend for D2C brands. You know, we outtrended Kanye West for X months and drove 50 million in sales. We did this through events. Now I do this for X brands like you, ABC, here's how. Right? It's a very, very different about section where it's like, intrigue me with something. The same way that I started this webinar, right? I didn't come up here and be like, hey, y'all, I'm Mark, here's a slide deck. I said, hey, here's my content. Here's our revenue. Here's our impressions. Here's what we do. Now, like, let me actually talk to you about why we do what we do, how we do what we do. You probably wouldn't have paid attention if I just said, hey, I'm Mark. You know, I spent my career in marketing. I've done content. I've done social. I've done demand. I've done paid. But it's like, get them hooked, get to the point, make it emotional, make it punchy. It's like one of the most important things to do. I'll expand this and let's see where it goes. I'll have to refresh because when you use this, you do have to refresh. Okay, in my free time with my pup Albus, huge Harry Potter fan, trying to rescue my wife and coaching high school soccer. Okay, so overall, I would say there's some like storytelling that would be a huge up level in your profile. The humanizing part is fun, but you should also write this for mobile. Okay, so if you look at like a profile, and again, mine is not perfect. Mine needs a ton of work, but the reason that I'll pull it up right now is I like to use it as an example around like how. So mine is like, ideally, should there be some social trust? Should there be some unique hook? Should there be a story? Yes. Should there be data? You know, it says, you know, we've helped X founders and company drive 101.3 million impressions on LinkedIn in the last 6 months. That's driving their fastest revenue growth to date. right? If you're trying to grow on LinkedIn but getting stuck, here's why we do what we do. But it would be better than that. But then what I do is like, this is written for mobile. It's like, here are some data points, right? Here is data from company pages, from a personal brand, from founders. And then I do a really high level about like my career. So the reason I like that for you, Logan, is if you've done agency, if you've done other things, take your like 3 proof points that hit the key things you want to say and have them in your profile. Right. So it's like, I've helped startups that I've been the first marketer get a $300 million valuation from being 4 months off being bankrupt from the marketing that I've done through social and media. I do 1 million impressions a week on LinkedIn. I went from new to VP of marketing for a $3 billion company. And I got invited to speak on stage at SaaStr, South by Southwest, and some of the hottest tech events from just building my brand. You'll always have data. You just need to think about the social and emotional things your audience cares about. And even if it's not data, think about the biggest things that you've done, like the things that are memorable. There's a great format for your elevator pitch that I'll bring into the next episode because we're tight on time. But another thing that you can do that's a great thing to do is talk about your enemy, your why. Think about your Harry versus Voldemort. Your why and your enemy is one of the most powerful things you can do. I'll give you an example of what ours is and how you can think about writing for yours. So ghost writing is our enemy at authority. The reason it's our enemy is because people go hire a ghostwriting agency or a ghostwriter. They think that they're going to grow their brand and build. The problem is what most ghostwriters do is they're going to outsource you to some $1,200 a month copywriter who has 400 followers on LinkedIn. They've never built an audience. They've never built a career marketing. Like they don't know what you do and how you do it. And you end up paying all this money for ghostwriting, but it's not actually growing your brand. It's not building trust. It's not helping you, really like build anything meaningful. That's why you need ghost marketing. So what we do at Authority, we talk about it as ghost marketing. Myself and Daniel are career marketers. We've built multiple 7 to 8 figure media brands from the ground up. We're the only ones that create your content as an extension of your go-to-market team. So we talk about that as an enemy. So if you don't have data, talk about your why, talk about your enemy, and find ways to make it like short, tight, and emotionally impactful for your audience. Your about should be the strongest hook that you have. You should spend the most time on it, and you should get feedback from your ICP, your ideal customer profile. You should always have rolling cycles where you run customer interviews. Even if you're at an event, just say, hey, I'm trying to attract more people like you. Like, what drew your attention to my profile? What would resonate with you? I'm torn between A and B. Workshop your about with your audience. All right, we'll talk content, and then we can always continue and do this. Okay, so repost.
Yeah, let's take like a couple minutes to talk about content, but I want to make sure we have at least 10 minutes or 15 to talk Q&A from our audience.
100%. All right, so we'll do this one really quick because this is the first post here. First thing that I would say is you're not using vertical to your optimization. This is a 1920 by 1080 graphic, which means you're competing with 3 other people on a phone, not one. So immediately change this to vertical 800 by 999. Now, you're talking about prioritizing AI in your marketing strategy, but the event and the image in the event doesn't say anything that I can have a reaction to. So the same way of our Sunday analogy, tell me something about AI that I can have, bring in some humor, bring in something emotionally. One of my favorite hooks for this is like, AI will replace marketers. And then it's like, no, it actually won't, because people would actually need to know, how to write a great brief or something funny like that. Like, think about something that's like can actually like get my attention and tell me what you're going to do. But if I read this, unpack the future of AI marketing, join us for next insights, AI keynote. I have no idea what this is about outside of AI marketing. I don't know what I'm going to learn. So try to make it hyper specific. Like, we're going to teach you 3 ways to create content in 5 minutes using AI with these new tools, right? And then there's an image hook that connects to that, that's vertical. So I know that this has been a pretty tight episode. So Logan, we'll come back and we can always bring you on for like part 2 of the follow-up. But I'll stop the screen share, Kelly, and we can open up to Q&A, and
awesome.
We'll continue the series as we go.
Yeah, thanks for giving that live workshop. We're gonna head into audience Q&A. So audience, if you're still sticking around, click over to the Q&A tab, go through the questions, upvote the ones that you're most curious about, and we'll start with the ones that are most upvoted. All right, so for the first question, for B2B companies on LinkedIn, which yields better results, investing in a company page or focusing on thought leadership content through individual profiles?
So this is one of those like both bad and funny answers that every SEO will give you too, is the answer is it depends. And the reason it depends is you need to understand the state of your funnel today, what type of sales motion you have. If you are a 5 or 6 figure average contract value business and you're like a net new startup that people don't know your brand, that scenario, you're most likely going to want to invest in like your founder brand and your executive go-to-market leaders. The reason that's the case is like if you're trying to create a new category and there's a ton of people in that space, your founder and your go-to-market leaders, ideally who represent your ideal customer profile, the ones who would buy from you, are people who are going to respect you as a person, not a brand that they don't know yet. So typically it really depends on the situation that you're coming from. But the reason why most of our clients at Authority, we represent like between 2 to 4 of their profiles being founders, go-to-market leaders, other leaders, and company pages, is each gives you a different way that you can approach content. Most founders can talk about their why, their leadership lessons, their category strategy, their culture, and that doesn't come across as insincere. Your company page can offer more about, again, the people that are following your company page probably fall closer to that range of the 3 to 5% who are maybe more likely to buy. Maybe they followed some of your leaders. Maybe they're like engaging with your content. So you can create more content for them that's like value add events, which if you were just promoting the people that didn't know you, they're less likely to engage. The same is going to be true if you're talking about your newest feature release, your product announcements, your customer stories. Those things don't tend to perform as well unless the audience knows you already. So think about that Sunday of how you mix different sides of like companies and personal brands together. I know we're coming up on time, Kelly, so I'll try to cycle through these quick if you want to take the next.
Yeah, so a follow-up question on this is a lot of the tips that you shared today, can they be applied to company pages, or is that a completely different playbook? And similarly, a question from Molly, are these typically practices for individual profiles versus company profiles?
No. So the tips that I've shared today, we use across company pages and individual brands. For example, of the company pages that we've scaled, we've done between 6 to 10 million per quarter for company pages using the exact same strategies. The thing that you need to be really mindful about in building company pages is you want to make sure that you're writing like that you content for your audience, that 0-click value content, Amanda Sparktoro style, not just we content. The biggest mistake that companies make comes back to that first myth that I talked about, which is talking more about your product does not generate more revenue or more like loyalty for your brand. Talking like to your audience. Most B2B company pages, if you look at them, are like stock tickers of like webinars, events, we've done blah, blah, blah. 99% of them don't write to like you or the audience. You need to be having a mix of like, if your media brand is still part of your company page, then you want to make sure that at least like 60 to 70% of your content is building your following, explaining your why, speaking very clearly to one audience, one emotion, one learning. Like, we've helped some of our clients through their company pages go from getting 500 people to an event to over 11,000, just from using smart company page content, right, to drive people who are interested in a topic, take them downstream, a podcast, a newsletter, an event. So there's like nuances between them, but the strategies here will apply for any type of LinkedIn content, no matter what type of profile it is.
Awesome. All right, we're going to go a little bit more tactical now. So should we use emojis in our copy? I thought the LinkedIn algorithm deprioritized copy with emojis.
The only thing you should cut out from your LinkedIn copy are hashtags. So the reason why you shouldn't use hashtags is hashtags are blue. They're accidentally clickable and they actually don't help with discoverability. I like emojis at a mix of a maximum 3 to 4 per post. The reason I like them is emojis have color, which draw contrast to headings. They break up text and they bring in your personality. So typically my posts have anywhere between like 3 to 4 emojis. I use arrows, emojis, but never hashtags anymore because don't use them. You want to basically minimize anything that takes contrast away from your key message. The same way that it might seem like a small detail of like Logan's profile of like the red pillar in his profile, it distracts me from reading his text, from seeing his profile. Emojis are carefully curated like attention with color. right, in a black and white feed that can help draw your reader in and keep them engaged over time. So I like to space them out like basically like sometimes in my hook or rehook, and then sometimes every like 20 to 30% of your post to keep it flowing.
All right. So from Allison, does it look bad to ask questions in your post, but then have no engagement?
No. So, I mean, so imagine this, flashback like 4.5 years ago. I'm brand new from management consulting into tech marketing. Had no idea about tech, didn't even understand the acronyms, and I needed to learn everything from zero. So what I did is like I just started posting questions on LinkedIn. And then what I ended up doing, which is a great hack to make sure you get more engagement, is I went and I joined go-to-market communities in Slack. And I would post the same question. I would get feedback answers, or I would ping people with that keyword. Like I would go search the Slack communities. I'd find someone who said something like that, and I would send them this connection request. And you can use this format. I'll share it later, and I'll link back to how you can use it in your post. Maybe like, hey, Sarah, Sarah was like the CMO, like Talkdesk, let's say. Hey, Sarah, saw you're an expert in international expansion for go-to-market. We're going to be looking at opening in, EMEA and APAC. Would you be game for like a 15-minute chat about how you've done this? P.S. Saw you from San Fran. My favorite restaurant is China Live. Going to be there in October. Talk soon, Mark. Some version of that. I used to have it by city, by topic per person. I would go get their insight. Then what I would do is I would come back to my post about that question, and I wouldn't just ask a question. I'd say, hey, all, maybe I posted this and I got no engagement the first time. I came back to it a week later and I'd say, hey, all, I had this question, which means you probably have this question too. Here's what I learned in the last week. Boom. Here's the 5 things I learned from Slack summarized with a tactical take and a shout out to the person who taught me them. Then I'd say, hey, Sarah, tagged her. Really appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. Here was my number 1 takeaway and how Sarah drove X using Y. P.S. If you're looking for more like this, make sure to give me a follow. I'm going to be the person willing to ask the questions that you may not feel comfortable doing. So take anything as a learning opportunity to bring value to your audience. If you have that question, your audience probably does. Find a way to answer it for them and bring what you've learned back. You don't need to be an expert from day one. You need to curate expertise for others in a way that solves their problems. So you don't have to have the answers, but go get them. Or if you don't have them yet, just share what you've learned and you can crowdsource to get there, but never be worried about that. My first post got 3 likes and 73 impressions. You have to start somewhere. Don't compare your day 1 to someone's day 100.
Awesome advice. Next question is, are LinkedIn articles still relevant?
So this is an interesting topic, and LinkedIn are changing where they're focusing. My belief, I don't do one right now, but I'm starting sort of like a LinkedIn new newsletter series and article series. The reason that I think you should still do them if you have the content is the same reason I showed around search engine indexing, right? In the future where OpenAI are building search and other people are building search, we never know where we're going to pull from. But right now, like Google really values high social engagement content. It gives you a really great boost in the search engine results page ranking in the SERP. So from my perspective, the more coverage you have online, even if it's the same content in a newsletter, it's always better to have that content indexed and existing and make yourself more discoverable. So if you're writing an article just to have it on LinkedIn and it doesn't exist anywhere else, should you do it? I think that question is like, in your priority list, where does that rank of the things that you must do versus like what you should do? One of my favorite techniques you can do is take a piece of paper. I'll show you how I do this. I take these from like hotels and I'll put on that piece of paper the like top 20 things I want to do that year. I'll rank them like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then this is the Warren Buffett method. You literally cut down to the only 5 things that matter, and the other 15, they become your do not do list. Like literally avoid those things at all costs, because we underestimate what we can really do in a short period of time, but we overestimate like, the effects of like that compound growth. So if that made your top 5 list of like, grow the newsletter, have an article, increase my presence so that I can get invited to more events and have better coverage versus A, B, and C, and it checked that top 5. Yes. If it's in your 15 of do not do's, don't touch it.
Awesome. All right. Next question is a little bit more tactical. This is the second to last question that we have. So from Lucy, how many posts do you recommend per week, per month for a B2B brand? A new client wants to have 2 a day.
Yeah. So The answer is whichever you will be consistent about and actually adding value to your audience without feeling stressed or that you don't have enough sort of like meaningful things to say. The way to think about this is like what I call channel FOMO. So many brands get channel fear of missing out. They're like, oh, if I'm not posting on LinkedIn 3 times a day, I'm going to miss out. Here's a stat for you. LinkedIn will index your content and average your reach across 3 important timelines. And this is all in an 18-hour window. Your engagement in the very first hour, the first 60 minutes, then your 6-hour mark, then your 18-hour mark. Any post that you create within that 18 hours will cannibalize the existing basically bell curve of what would remain from your first post. So if you are really optimizing for maximum reach, you'd want to post once every 18 hours. The problem is 18 hours doesn't work with the ideal times to post on LinkedIn. For me, I post at like 6 a.m. Pacific and about 6 p.m. Pacific. And the reason that I do that is because the normalized bell curve of like that engagement for me is at about like 80 to 85% at 6 p.m. Pacific. It hasn't quite been 18 hours, but it's been enough for me that first post got enough of like it's, juice in the feed that it worked. So that's when I do them. But really the answer is it's like if they're committed, if they have meaningful things to say, and if you're not going to be posting just like bad content in the feed, the reason being people don't think about negative signal. Content, negative signal is worse than posting nothing. So if you're scrambling to post something just to post and it's about you, your audience doesn't care, it's poorly produced, don't post it for the sake of checking a box or you'll create commodity content. Create what your audience will value. That's why I personally love to bring in memes, humor. You can make them in 2 minutes in Canva and it can still add value for your audience. Not everything needs to be like the length of the Odyssey when you're writing it. So the answer is not like it's going to be the same for everyone, but make sure what you're doing adds value and don't worry about FOMO. It's like the same way you probably shouldn't have TikTok, a newsletter, a podcast, and LinkedIn. Brian Balfour has a great piece from Reforge you should check out. It's called The Power Law of Distribution. And 80% of your growth, early stage, especially in a startup, will come from one channel. So you should experiment to find what that channel is. But once you find it, double down and focus on being great at that one channel, not at trying to go wide. So if LinkedIn's your primary source of doing that, absolutely double down and do it. But don't do it if you're going to send negative signal.
Awesome. We have time for one more question, but probably right after this, we're going to end the webinar. So definitely tune back in next week and the week after for part 2 and part 3 with Mark here. But the last question we have from Molly is really, really centered around events. So what about posts that are promoting events or webinars? We gave the advice not to add link and comments. I feel like waiting 20 to 30 minutes would lose out on people who want to register but don't have the link. What's your advice here, Mark?
So what I do here is I'll put something, usually like cheeky humor, and I'll put the link to the webinar in my profile. So on my profile page, where I have like right now, it's like my authority in our wait list, is you can actually put that event on your profile. And what you can do is you can also, if you're paying for LinkedIn Premium, which if you're investing in LinkedIn, you should be, you have a button like I have that says visit my website. You can literally change your visit my website link that day to your event. So what I would do is when I'm promoting the event, I would say, hey, check out go above and click the visit my website link. And I would say, PS, like the link is in my profile, go check it out and register. Then after 20 minutes go by, you delete that piece and edit it within 14% of the total character count to add your link. And then the first 20 to 30 minutes that there was no link, you don't lose anything out. Right? You can still keep that text and add on to it to make it easy for people, but it's like a seamless way to add people from like your post to that topic. And we've used this to drive probably close to like 40,000, event attendees across our clients using these same strategies, probably actually closer to like maybe 75,000, but really, really simple. Don't get bogged down in like worrying about also like the minor optimizations. If people see it and they're interested, they'll probably comment too. Hey, we'd love to catch the event, but like make it easy for them, make it minimal friction, do those 3 things.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those tips. We will go through all the questions and make sure we provide context and answers to anybody who may not have gotten an answer today. But thank you again, Mark, for joining us, for sharing your expertise and all of your hacks and myth busting. We're super excited to have everyone back next week and the week after. But thanks so much for everyone tuning in.
Yeah, thanks all. I just dropped my LinkedIn in the comments, so make sure you shoot me a connect if you have any questions. We'll run part 2. Kelly and Goldcast team, appreciate y'all. This has been fun, and yeah, I'll bring more sarcasm, more memes, and hopefully good stories. So appreciate everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.